Good afternoon. Welcome to another live feed. Shot Mitchell's YouTube channel, man. Down to the last pitch. How the 1991 Minnesota Twins and Atlanta Braves get to the name of the book. This is one of the great classic World Series ever played. Yeah, it's called Down to the Last Pitch. How the 1991 Minnesota Twins and the Atlanta Braves gave us the best World Series of all time. You can make a case, man. That was the greatest World Series ever. I remember that very well. I was 12 years old. I was watching that World Series with my brother, especially in Game 7. I think we had these white towels waving it because we wanted the Braves to lose because we wasn't into the Braves, man. We were into we wanted Minnesota Twins to win that series, and I remember that vividly, man. Jack Buck with the call on Kirby Puckett hitting that home run against I think Charlie Lee Brandt. He said, "We'll see you tomorrow night." I mean, that was a great call by Jack Buck. You know what I'm saying? Especially as a 12-year-old watching that call being made. Kirby Puckett made some great plays. I think he made a great leaping catch against the wall. That was at the Metrodome. And that was a great series, man. So this book had to be written. It's the right thing to write about it. Now, this book came out back in 2014, I believe. So, yeah, about 12 years ago. So, this is 35 years of this World Series, man. And this is the 35th anniversary coming up this October. So, I'm going to get into his game one, Saturday, October 19th, 1991, at Hubert H. Humphrey Metrodome in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Let's get into it. As the hometown Twins took the field, the sellout crowd broke into another sustained roar, clamorous and downright chaotic. The rising and air-splitting din could have been a beast, reawakening after a long sleep as shortstop Greg Gagne jogged out to his position. He decided the fans were as loud as they had been in 1987. The last time the Twins played in the World Series, they had just had to beat. The fans were ready to raise a ruckus and wake up the echoes of yesteryear. The best home field advantage in sports had been brought back to life again, with the promise of another wild ride in the offing. Now would the hometown team be able to do its part? As Gagne took his position for the top of the first inning, he thought about how much the Twins lineup had changed in recent years. Sure, such Minnesota favorites as Kent Herbeck and Kirby Puckett were still among the regulars, but besides those two stars, Wayne Gagne, Randy Bush, Al Newman, Dan Gladden, and Gene Larkin remained from the last World Series team. And Larkin had somehow stayed on the postseason roster despite a bad knee, leaving him barely able to run. Here in the infield of hard bounced astroturf with only dirt cutouts around the bases, Gadney was flanked by a pair of relative newcomers on this night. Scott Lewis had taken the place of Twins favorite Gary Gaddy at third base. Eddie, aka the Rat, now played in California. So Gadney's left stood another rookie, Chuck Knobloch. But even though the spark plug of a kid had led first year American League players in hits, doubles, and RBIs, the hands down favorite to win Rookie of the Year honors, no one knew how he would react when things became fickle and unpredictable, as they surely would with so much at stake. After all, this was the World Series, with everybody watching. And like any good story, nobody dared predict the ending or would be who would be the hero or the GOAT. One last time, Godney glanced at the first faces to either side of him. Everyone now ready for the first pitch, and he could only smile at how baseball worked. So it was cutthroat 1 minute and need of team unity the next. What people forget is that both of them, Chuck Knobloch and Scott Lewis, were originally shortstops. They came to the organization playing my position, looking to take my job. But the thing with baseball, once things are decided, you pick yourselves up and do your best. I mean, what choice do you have? Either of those guys, Nabi or Lewis, wanted my job back in the spring, but it didn't matter. No, now we had to come together and try to beat a really good Braves team. So behind the plate, Twins catcher Brian Harper caught the last of Jack Morse's warm-up pitches, heartening that Black Jack's split finger fastball, his signature pitch, had plenty of bite on this night. After throwing down to second base, Harper glanced around the infield one last time before settling into his crouch. Years later, the Twins catcher and shortstop would realize that they were thinking really the same thing at this point on the eve of it all. The Twins infield ready to go amid the noise, alternated between veterans and kids. Herbert to Navlat, Gagne to Lewis, all the way around the horn. Although Harper had almost as many years in the majors as Herbert and Puckett, he hadn't exactly made a mark for himself, at least not on this big a stage. At the bouncer between five ball clubs, California, Pittsburgh, St. Louis, Detroit, and Oakland, he hadn't caught more than 100 games in the season until after he arrived in the Twin Cities in 1988. Now he was back in the World Series after almost being an improbable postseason hero once with the Cardinals. The Atlanta liked to run the bases, push the envelope. Harper's arm wasn't the strongest in the league, couldn't argue with that. So as the Braves, Lonnie Smith stepped in and the crowd ramped it up a few more decimals, Harper took a deep breath, told himself to be like Herbeck, Gagne, and Puckett out there in center field. Nothing against the newcomers. They had plenty of talent for sure. Still, Harper couldn't help thinking that experienced hands would ultimately carry the day in this unlikely matchup. Nobody in a uniform either team knew they were about to take the first step into a series for the ages, one that will soon regarded as among the best in baseball history, perhaps the best of all time. Such postseason classics can be counted on a hand or two and include the 1975 matchup between the Cincinnati Reds and the Boston Red Sox. Thanks for the 15 people tuning in. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you like it. When Carson pitched homered in the 12th inning of the Game 6 back in 1972, the start of Oakland's dynasty run, that series serves up 6 one-run games. In 1968, a taut 7-game series between the Detroit Tigers and St. Louis Cardinals helped a grieving nation carrying on after the tragic assassinations of Dr. Martin Luther King and Bobby Kennedy. Of course, there was Bill Razorowski's walk-off home run in 1960 that carried Pittsburgh past the New York Yankees. In 1955, the Brooklyn Dodgers finally broke through against the Yankees juggernaut. All of them were memorable times for sure, but none would have 5 games determined in the home team's last at-bat that would be the case in 1991, a series that will see 4 games decided on the last pitch. To truly appreciate what unfolded in 1991, we need to go deep into each ball game, letting these contents play out in the actions and words of those who were on the field. Every pitch, every strike, every ball, every inning, everything mattered in every game, said Terry Pendleton, who played third base for Atlanta in this epic showdown. My father told me, and I think he was right, he said that each game is like you're reading a book. Twins manager Tom Kelly said later. You got cheaper, you got chapter 1 or game 1, then 2. And it's getting better and better and better and better and better and better. Yet as we do so, we need to help keep in mind that almost everything America often cuts both ways. Braves general manager John Schuerholz called the 1991 series great for our industry. Maybe, maybe not. But in having 2 teams go from last place to the Fall Classic, and underscore that any team could dare, we say, should be able to reach such heights. In the profound change of the early 90s, the end of the Cold War and the beginning of the War on Terror, the shift in national leadership from the greatest generation to the baby boomers, the rapid transition from family-owned companies to corporate multinationals. Everything became much more demanding. Everybody simply became more important and patient for results and successes. Nobody really talked about rebuilding anymore, about being in it for the long haul. Instead, the buzzword became retool, which often was explained as an almost magical phenomenon that didn't require methodical and careful reconstruction or perhaps even due diligence. You could almost hear owners throughout sports strongly mirroring what was going on in the private sector, saying to themselves that if the Twins and the Braves could reach the World Series, then why not us? Some of their general managers, front office, personnel to fix it, or else they would be sent packing too. The notable first began early and often in the 1991 championship. The Braves, Lonnie Smith was the designated hitter for Game 1 and then batting leadoff for the visiting Braves. His appearance marked only the 3rd time in the last 61 World Series games that the DH had taken the first swings in the contest. Amazingly, in all 3 cases, Smith was the guy. He was also the designated hitter, batting leadoff in Game 4 of the 1980 series and in Game 5 of the 1982 series. Thanks for hitting the like button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Also on this night in Minneapolis, Smith became the first player in baseball history to appear in the World Series with 4 different teams: the Kansas City Royals, the Philadelphia Phillies, St. Louis Cardinals, and now the Atlanta Braves. Perhaps these were nothing more than footnotes for anybody else, but Smith's exploits at the plate and certainly on the base paths would loom large in this fall classic. Smith began the game by lining out to Smith twins left fielder Dan Gladden. From there, Moses Morris kept the Braves off the scoreboard early on, with Atlanta starter Charlie Lee matching him. Some had found Lee Brandt a curious choice to start game one over 20-game winner Tom Glavine. Thanks for the second person that's subscribed. Hit the like button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're new to the channel. Yet, Braves manager Bobby Cox often depended on the Lee Brandt, who had a decade at the major league level between Cincinnati and Kansas City before coming to Atlanta in 1990. The left-hander had posted a 15-13 record during the regular season and was regarded as the elder statesman on the pitching staff of young guns that also included Steve Avery and John Smoltz. In the bottom of the third inning, the Twins broke through for the series' first run. Gladden, who had tracked down 3 fly balls in the first 3 innings of the game, walked and then stole second base. Rookie Chuck Knobloch promptly drove him in with the opposite field, fled to right field. Gladden crossed home plate. Knobloch was tagged out, trying to stretch his single into a double. The Twins had decided months before they could live with such rookie mistakes. Though drafted in the first round out of Texas A&M in 1989, Chuck Knobloch had risen quickly through the minor leagues, sticking with big league ball club coming out of spring training. His father Ray had been a minor league pitcher. His uncle Ed was an outfielder in the Texas League. Originally shortstop whose boyhood hero had been Isaac Smith. Knobloch switched to second base at Double-A Orlando. It was the fast track to the majors. And winning the regular job during the spring, he filled a hole in the Twins lineup that had seen the likes of Steve Lombardozzi, Tom Herr, Chip Hale, Fred Marique, and Wally Backman in recent years. Off field, the 23-year-old, although like a rookie he was, telling reports how big a fan he was in the soap opera days of our lives, how breakfast most mornings was a heaping bowl of frosted flakes. But on the field, Knobloch regularly came through. That's all anybody in the Twin Cities cared about at the time. Chuck's development is a major reason why we're here, said Andy McPhail, the Twins general manager at the time. What I first liked about him is that he knows the game. Terry Crawley, the hitting coach of the Twins, added, what Chuck has done this season is one of the most difficult things to do in baseball. He stepped in, made a good team that much better. I don't think of him as a rookie anymore, Kent Hrbek said. He's done too good of a job to still be called a rookie. Throughout baseball, teams were increasingly on the lookout for somebody like Knobloch, a kid who could move into a regular lineup without a lot of fanfare, hand holding for opportunity, awaiting with the ball clubs that could quickly flesh out their rosters and prove that they could compete. Since the 1969 season, Major League Baseball no longer crowned run the regular season champion in the American League and National Leagues, especially, and then had them go to the World Series. Baseball now sported divisional winners, a total of 4 teams in the postseason, the promise of more divisional champions and even wild card berths on the horizon. As the 1991 season began, the Atlanta Braves had plenty of young stars in their own. This pitcher stat only spoiled Glavine, who would go on to win the Cy Young Award, but also left-handed Steve Avery and right-hander John Smoltz as well. In the everyday lineup, fan favorite Dale Murphy had been traded to Philadelphia the year before to make room for David Justice. Perhaps this was a painful move for Braves followers, but it certainly paid off. Despite such potential, the Braves spun their wheels throughout the first half of the season. It wasn't until after the All-Star break that they took off, winning 55 of 83 games, including 21 of their last 29 as they surged past the Los Angeles Dodgers. It was a glamour team against a Cinderella team. Stan Gaston said, the team president of the National League stretched drive. This is a race people will talk about for years to come. The Braves clinched the Western Division title on the next to last day of the 1991 season, finishing with 94 victories. That total was an Atlanta team score record, 29 more victories than they recorded the year before. The Twins also got to a slow start in 1991 before putting together a 15-game winning streak that lifted them into first place in June. Minnesota had a promising young hurler of its own, and Scott Erickson, who won 20 games, a right-hander, including 12 in a row this season. Perhaps the decisive series of the regular season occurred in mid-August when the Oakland Athletics, the reigning American League champs, arrived in the Twin Cities for 4 games, although Minnesota had been in a slump. After dropping 3 of 4 to the California Angels, the Twins turned the tables on the Athletics, winning 3 games behind Moore's ballpark bullpen victories by relievers Carl Willis and Rick Aguilera. Perhaps the telling moment that the worst to first underdogs could take the AL West came at the third victory. In the bowels of the Metro Dome, several of the A's hurried from the visiting clubhouse eager to avoid questions from the media. One of them appeared to be Jose Canseco, who was considered to be among the best players in the game at the time after hitting 42 home runs and stealing 40 bases in 1988. Of course, this was long before evidence of steroids and performance-enhancing drugs became so overwhelming. Canseco opened the clubhouse door, saw a half dozen or members of the press glaring at them. He swung the door shut. The loud thud echoed down the hallway, and that Canseco strode off. Yet after a few long strides, he stopped and looked back with a thin smile. Just kidding, he said. Then the Twins weren't kidding around in 1991 as they finished with 95 victories, one more than the Braves over in the National League. 8 games ahead of the Chicago White Sox, 11 games up on the Canseco's athletics when the regular season ended. I just never felt like we were a last place team, Brian Harper said when comparing the Twins' 1990-1991 editions. It was unbelievable how in 1991 we hit, we didn't pitch, and when we pitched, we didn't hit. We didn't pitch where we didn't hit. Last year was the weirdest year I've ever seen, but it wouldn't hold a candle to what was about to happen in 1981 postseason. Round ball, round bat. Ted Williams once said that having them get each other so the impact is square solid remains the most difficult feat to accomplish in sports. And the slugger, any has come before or after him, will echo those words. What do we make of those moments when ball and bat do meet Joe So? When the ball flies off the bat as though it had a mind of its own, and for an instant they only roll it knows in life is so as soar over the outfield fence like a flock of geese heading for the horizon. What registers in the batter's box was, what does one remember? It's the field. It's the field. Frank Robinson said. You don't feel anything down the bat hole and handle. I'm not trying to make a joke. That's how it is. But when you really hit the ball, there are no vibrations. You could be swinging through the air. That's how perfect it is. Let's get to gate one. In the bottom of the fifth, Ken Herbeck broke the 2-0 pitch from Charlie Reban to right field for a stand-up double. Scott Lewis flew out with a soft single left. Herbert holding at third. Reban may have trailed only 1-0 at this point, but it wasn't fluent many of the Twins players. So the crowd was more than 55,000 at the Metrodome. Pretty much all of them now on their feet, cheering and waving those former white Homer hankies. That sound of a dry branch breaking in the woods, an echo of every lone fly that's ever happened in this game was about to occur again. So Gagne was ready. He caught a square inside and the ball began to soar toward the left field fence, landing 8 rows into the bleachers. Minnesota took a 4-0 lead. The Twins squad had a chance to break the game wide open later in the same inning when Gladden thrown out at the plate with 1 out and Gladden on third base. Brian Harper hit a liner down the left field line, leaving it could drop for a hit. Gladden first broke for the plate, then had to scramble back to the bag when Braves outfielder Brian Hunter caught it. He compounded his mistake while then trying to tag up and score. Coming in with spikes somewhat high on Atlanta's catcher Greg Olson, even though the ball arrived well ahead of Gladden. The resulting collision sent Olson flying backward, rocking him on his head, flipping him completely over. It became the cover shot on Sports Illustrated. I never saw Danny do that before. You learned that day, from that day one. If the ball goes in the air to the outfield, you go back to the base. It won't be the last bang bang play with major contact at the plate in this series. Despite the hard slide, Olsen refused to criticize Gladden afterward. So the catcher stuck up Lee Brandt, insisting that outside the mistake to Andy Gagne, Land's starting pitcher had done a good job. He's got the best changeup on the team. He struck out Kirby Puckett twice. Anytime you go do that, got to be doing something right. What made the Worcester First World Series so unlikely, so improbable, was that the Twins and Braves arguably defeated better ball clubs on paper, Toronto Blue Jays and Pittsburgh Pirates. In the league championship series, the Blue Jays and the Pirates were considered to be the best teams in baseball. The roster was studded with stars like Joe Carter, Roberto Alomar, Bobby Bonilla, Barry Bonds. Both teams would lose in gut-wrenching fashion in the this year's postseason. Only one team, the Blue Jays, would soon be bound for such heartbreak. 1991 was a year that Toronto took chances on a major hit in Game 3 when Joe Carter crashed the outfield wall, injured his ankle. Until this point, Toronto seemed to have things well in hand. But with Carter humbled, coupled with curious decisions by Blue Jays manager Cito Gaston, but the Twins soon won out. advanced to the World Series. So the League Championship Series began in 1969 as a five-game series, but expanded to seven-game format in 1985. Back in 1991, that seemed to favor the Blue Jays had a deeper pitching staff that Minnesota did. Yet Gaston chose knuckleballer Zon Candiotti pitched the first game in Minneapolis over young fly baller Juan Guzman, consistent fielder Jimmy Key. The Twins scored two runs in the first and second innings off Candiotti and held on for a 5-4 victory. In Game 2 of the ALCS, the Blue Jays did what other teams could only dream of, defeat the Twins in the Metrodome. But with Guzman in command, Toronto stopped Minnesota from winning its 8th consecutive game at home, which would have tied a postseason record. But gaining a split on the road, Toronto returned home and once again appeared to have the pitching advantage. Twins right-hander Scott Erickson may have gone 20-8 during the regular season and been nicknamed the Prince of Darkness for using a black glove and wearing dark socks on the days he pitched, but due to a sore elbow, his aura of invincibility had been broken once weeks ago. In Game 3, the scowl, Erickson was there, but yet his pitches lacked velocity. Twins manager Tom Kelly later admitted that he had been worried when Erickson threw 31 pitches in the first inning as the Blue Jays took a 2-0 lead. As Erickson laid with Toronto star Jimmy Key tied an American League postseason record by returning the first 11 batters he faced in the top of the fifth. Though Carter climbed the fence and right trying to corral Shane Mack's hard liner. Skip around. After just hitting 254 for San Diego, Pagliulo signed with the Twins before the 1991 season. I wasn't begging for a job. There were a couple teams still interested. I needed to find a situation that was right for me. That's why I signed with the Twins. The next two games will be in Toronto. Puckett coaching that team. Twins weren't exactly in the driver's seat. Blue Jays were heading for the ditch thanks to the next inning loss and the injury to Carter. The Toronto Sluggers stayed in the lineup as the designated sitter tried to stay active by playing ping pong in the Blue Jays clubhouse. But it was no good. With Toronto already holding a 1-0 lead, Carter struck out with 2 men on in the third inning. The Twins took Game 4 9-3 and clinched the AL pennant by scoring 6 runs in the last 4 innings to win 8-5 in the following evening. As Gladden drifted back to catch a fly ball on the warning track for the final out, CBS Sports' Dick Stockton told viewers, and the Minnesota Twins have gone from the cellar to the penthouse in the American League. But once again, the Blue Jays had come too close to reaching the World Series only to fade in the ALCS. 3 times, 1985, 1989, and now 1991. The previous 6 years, Toronto had been one step away from reaching its first World Series, fell agonizingly short. Despite such disappointment, Blue Jays general manager Pat Gillett, decided to retain Gaston as manager. He had a very patient ownership group in Toronto, which allowed us to build that team the way it should be. It was like we were climbing a mountain. You went through a lot of trials and tribulations, made the playoffs in '91, and we didn't get there. All those bumps along the road just make you appreciate when you do win a World Series. Thanks in large part to Gillett's patience, the Blue Jays finally did reach baseball summit the season after losing to the Twins. Began a run for the Blue Jays that would see them win 2 consecutive World Series titles, first team to do so since the New York Yankees did it in 78 and 78, 77 and 78. That's what it is. All right. Gillett will eventually be selected to the National Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, member of the class of 2011, along with Roberto Alomar and Bert Blyleven. Bert Blyleven pitched for the Twins. Blue Jays had Roberto Alomar. Back in 1991, Gillett seen a long way from the victory champagne. This time around, it was Henry Fell's odds that was smart as air matted down from a $1,000 bogey after the Twins took the American League pennant in the victorious Twins clubhouse. The general manager explained how he had rebuilt his play card so the pennant winning when the massive right hand broke through the throne surrounding him. Thanks for that phone call, said designated hitter of the Twins, Chili Davis at the time. Davis, like Mike Pagliulo, had proved to be a key addition from Minnesota. The Twins had plenty of heroes ago, and many of whom felt I brought a ball besides Pagliulo. And Davis, those were pitchers like Kevin Tapani, David West, and Rick Aguilera. These young arms had come to the Twin Cities in a controversial trade with the New York Mets, when McPhail sent staff ace Frank Viola packing. Tapani, West, and Aguilera had pitched in the deciding game against Toronto. I said it last year when it wasn't a popular thing to say, but I say it again. Everybody got what they thought they were going to get in that trade. The Mets got a 20-game winner. They were a big market team. They could afford him. We needed numbers. We needed a little bit of relief from payroll. We got the young pitchers we thought we were getting. They got the big stud left-hander that they thought they were getting. At the bottom of the season of the World Series, Game 1, the Twins, Herbeck lofted a high fly ball down the left field line. Terry Pendleton drifted over toward the temporary box seats where the games where teams often see it, but he couldn't snag. Instead, the ball came straight down, striking Ann Vincent, daughter of the commissioner, on the back of the head. She will be taken to the first aid room at Metrodome, but she refused treatment. Sporting a good-sized lump, she soon returned to her seat. She was more embarrassed than anything, said Faye Vincent, her father, baseball commissioner. Ann Vincent was still rubbing the back of her head, and Herbeck lacks a 3-1 offering from Braves reliever Jim Clancy to the upper deck in right field. The solo shot gave the Twins a 4-run lead, and after going 3 for 21 at ALCS against Toronto, Herbeck already had a double and a home run in 1991 World Series. He was a local hero who grew up near the Metropolitan Stadium in Bloomington in 1982, was the runner-up to Cal Ripken for the American League Rookie of the Year. A big gun, outspoken, and even goofy, Herbeck was a fan favorite and media favorite alike. ESPN's Tim Kirchner once called Herbeck the most human baseball player ever. The only person who tells me what to do now is my wife. TK can't tell me to bunt. Coaches can't tell me what to do. The only person I take calls from is my wife. She told me to cut the lawn today, so I cut the lawn. That's it. Skip around a little bit. Pretty long chapter. 8th inning. Twins were up 5-1. Their best pitcher at the top of the inning, 8th. They were up 5-1. Twins bullpen was well rested after 5 days off before the start of the World Series. Skip around. Let me tune in right now. That's what took place, man. Minnesota won Game 1, 5-2. So that's all need to be said. So I'll be in Chapter 2 tomorrow. Game 2, Sunday, October 20th, 1991, at Hubert H. Humphrey Metrostone, Minneapolis, Minnesota. That's going to be on the dock tomorrow. So till then, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for liking the video. Hopefully have some subscribers. Hopefully I get more viewers for this video. I do the Big Trouble in Little China. I think that's the next one coming up pretty soon. So till then, talk to you soon.